So bearing in mind the form factor, the use case, how does Steam Machine compare to a console? We got a wealth of information on PC titles running at PS5 equivalent settings, so let's get straight into it, and we'll start by revisiting the Crimson Desert CPU test on matched settings, and that includes using VSync as PlayStation 5 does. Not that this adds any particular cap to performance here on Steam Machine, we're well under 60 FPS. Returning to Bug Hill, Steam Machine performs significantly better when CPU limited. A 34.8 FPS average across the run on PS5 is improved to 41.2 FPS average on Steam Machine, so the Valve hardware has more legs, clearly. We're also CPU limited in the city of Baldur's Gate in Baldur's Gate 3, and here's where things get weird. Using the default native Linux build, which is what will install if you download it, we're only 11% faster on Steam Machine versus PlayStation 5. However, force the use of Proton instead and use the original Windows code working through the translation layer, and we get a 24% improvement in performance against PlayStation 5. Larian did update Baldur's Gate 3 for Steam Deck, significantly improving CPU-bound performance and stability, but I'm wondering if those optimizations were deck-specific to the detriment of other PC hardware. Put simply, if you're playing Baldur's Gate 3 on Linux, on SteamOS, or on Steam Machine, I'd recommend switching to Proton here. It's an automatic 11% performance boost in this test versus the native Linux app. Graphics now, and in a world where the RX 7600 is broadly comparable to the PS5 GPU, we should expect the Steam Machine to fall a little short, but I didn't see anything that drastically concerned me, to be honest. Let's kick off with Black Myth Wukong. It's a good start because it's not a particularly great PS5 port, so it should favour Steam Machine. The widest delta sees the PS5 running 17 to 18% ahead of Steam Machine, while other areas can see a smaller lead for the Valve machine over PS5, while elsewhere we're looking at absolute parity. It's fascinating to see it actually. On average, it's a 3% lead for PlayStation 5, but this doesn't reflect the reality that on a moment-by-moment basis, it's much more variable. Next up, the classic Alan Wake 2 Chapter 2 stress test, and some interesting results here. In performance mode, we're looking at a 9% lead for the PS5 version. 55.3 FPS plays 50.7 FPS. Not exactly a gaping chasm, right? Alan Wake 2 isn't available on Steam, of course. I got it running by using the Heroic Launcher installed in Steam Machine's desktop mode. Yes, it is a Steam Machine, but we've got to remember that it's not just a console-like experience. Under the hood there, it is a full PC with full desktop access. We can also do like-for-like testing in Crimson Desert based on performance mode, and the GPU performance differential is more like 17% here in favour of the PS5, and that makes sense to me, bearing in mind how often we saw this number when comparing the Steam Machine to RX 7600, and yes, the 7600 does have broadly similar GPU performance to PlayStation 5. Forza Horizon 5 next. We can't do apples to apples here precisely as console can use dynamic resolution scaling, topping out at native 4K with 4x MSAA, and some settings like reflections themselves are dynamic, which isn't an option on PC. What I've done here is to show Steam Machine running the same sequence at native 4K on the same settings and then at 1620p, which represents 75% of 4K resolution on both axes. We're way short of PS5 performance at a lot 4K, but almost there at 1620p. I think bandwidth is the issue here. Bandwidth is quite lavish on PlayStation 5 in comparison to Steam Machine, and even at 1620p, bandwidth-heavy effects can cause small frame rate drops. But you know, 1620p still looks fine, and VRR basically would make this pretty much a non-issue. And actually at this point, I'd like to show something else I quite like about Steam Machine and AMD GPUs in general. There's support for a wide range of output resolutions, 1800p, 1620p, just to name a couple. As we're demonstrating here, we save a ton of performance, and on a 4K screen, especially in the living room at couch distances, you don't lose that much. In fact, the static HUD elements are more noticeably scaled. One final Steam Machine versus PlayStation 5 game test. 007 First Light. We have console equivalent settings direct from IO Interactive on this one, but we have got a bit of an issue. The PlayStation 5 version has dynamic resolution scaling from 720p to 1080p using FSR 3.1.5 to upscale to 4K. The PC version does not have DRS, and neither will it let you use FSR upscaling from 720p to 4K. You'd need an ultra performance mode there that is not an option in the game. So yeah, the stresses that we're putting on the GPU here will vary even though the content is effectively matched. In the explosive airfield segment, we're kicking off a major chain reaction of destruction. It's one of the only GPU limited parts of the game where I've seen drops on PlayStation 5, so presumably we're at minimum 720p DRS at this point. FSR3 performance mode on Steam Machine has the same internal resolution but far less FSR GPU demands, since we're only upscaling to 1440p, not 4K. And there are small dips here both on PlayStation 5 and on Steam Machine, running internally at 720p on FSR3 performance mode. Meanwhile, FSR3 balance mode has a higher internal resolution and drops to between 48 to 50 FPS. It's frustrating that PC doesn't get dynamic resolution scaling to match PlayStation 5 spec, but at the same time PC does have full VRR support, and so does Steam Machine. Here's another test where we're testing streaming. PS5 can drop a few frames here and there, which does kind of suggest a CPU bottleneck. It's a clean 60 FPS with FSR3 performance mode on Steam Machine, and what must be the occasional GPU limit on balance mode. Either way, both Steam Machine variations here do run smoother than the PS5 build, and it's likely that the extra CPU performance is making itself known. But with that said, in our PC performance review, we noted some issues with crowds on the PC version that don't manifest on PlayStation 5. It's slight, but it's borne out in this shot. Locked on PlayStation 5, dropping frames on Steam Machine. And it doesn't really matter what resolution or upscaling factor you choose, you'll still get the same drops. That does indicate a CPU limited scenario. So while end results can be matched, it's not always 100% clear what's going on behind the scenes. Ultimately though, we've got console class performance here from Steam Machine in a unit that's a fraction of the size. It'll run modern games well, assuming you don't go crazy with ultra settings, especially on Unreal Engine 5 titles. And that you keep in mind that Valve only supplies 8GB of memory for the Steam Machine GPU. Yes, there are optimizations there, and as work is ongoing there at Valve, I decided to test this in depth at another time, but reasonably, we can only expect these mitigations to go so far compared to a GPU with more RAM. Of course, RDNA 4 and some kind of 9060 XT level GPU with 12 gigs of VRAM would have been better, but this is a machine built to a budget that was then torpedoed by the storage and memory crisis. For as long as games are built to look good and run well on PlayStation 5, I'd say that Steam Machine should be capable of producing comparable results, with flexibility in resolution, upscaling, and yes, frame generation options, delivering opportunities for Steam Machine users that PlayStation 5 gamers won't have. Still, that's all from me for now, so the usual stuff applies about liking, subscribing, sharing, bell ringing and whatnot. DF Supporter Program, well, joining us, supporting the team, it all helps. For example, all those PlayStation 5 comparisons, optimized settings, they're built from a body of work we've amassed over time, and that's only been possible thanks to our Patreon support. If you think we're useful and want to support our mission, patreon.com/digitalfoundry. You'll get updates from the team, early access opportunities, a brilliant community, ad-free, high-quality video downloads, ad-free website. It's good stuff. But that's all from me for now. Thanks for watching and supporting Digital Foundry.